Have you been told you need to go to mediation, but you're worried of the outcome because you simply cannot budge when it comes to your child's safety? Has your ex demanded 50-50 care, but deep down you know that the arrangement isn't in your child's best interest right now? Or maybe you're feeling pressured to attend mediation and you're wondering what is the point because this is an issue you just can't compromise on. If that sounds like your situation, then this episode will be great for you. Today we'll be talking about what mediation looks like when safety concerns are involved, how you can approach the conversation when you can't agree on equal time, and the kinds of options that you can discuss, like supervised time, step arrangements, and other safeguards, because mediation isn't about forcing parents to agree to something that's unsafe. It's about exploring whether there is a pathway forward that protects the children while still allowing progress to be made. Let's talk about how to navigate that, Mum. But before we get started, just a reminder, there will be discussions of family violence today. So if you are triggered by that, please consider listening to this with a friend or get a friend to listen it, or call 13 11 14 Lifeline if you do get triggered. And if you are experiencing any family violence, please call 1-800-RESPECT and get connected to your local support services. And a reminder that Mum is not your lawyer. I am not a lawyer. We are discussing how things work in Australian family law, and things may be different in other countries. However, some of these negotiation tactics and ideas may be helpful for you in your mediation wherever you are in the world. Welcome, Mum.
Hey, Laura. Hello, everyone.
Hello, I'm Laura, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
Today's topic is again triggered by the constant question of why should I go to mediation? What the heck am I going to do there? Because there's no way I want to budge on kids' safety. And I think that is a sticking point for a lot of people in mediation when it comes to kids. Property people can budge an extra
$1 here, $1 there.
100,000.
That's right. Yes.
Yes, but when it comes to kids, it's a little bit less easy to compromise because it's your kids.
Yes.
So, Mum, let's talk about the pressure that we're hearing people get. We're hearing people say, oh, I'm being forced to go to mediation. Mm-hmm. The lawyer's saying I have to go. My ex is saying I have to go. And I'm going to have to come to an agreement. Can you just talk people who've never done mediation before or who don't understand it? What is the purpose of mediation exactly?
So it's not, I'll tell you what it's not. It's not a place to force agreement on people. What it is a safe process, usually in person, but sometimes on screen.
One of those online
things.
thingies. Yeah.
And it's a process whereby you can be heard about your concerns, what you want. The other person can be heard about their concerns and what they want. And with the help of a facilitator, usually a mediator, usually only one, and maybe with their lawyers, each one having a lawyer, they try to narrow the gap between what one person thinks is right and what the other person thinks is right. And by digging down into what are people's motivations, what's their real concern, sometimes a mediator can help the parties bridge that gap. And they go on to, have happy days, I guess, consent orders or something.
Some people think it means compromise and meeting halfway. If they say 50-50 and you're like, I don't think it should be anything, so you should say 25, 25. So that's not what mediation is about.
No, it's not about you abandoning your position completely. It's not about throwing the kids under a bus just for the sake of peace or pressure. This is where you need a mediation is where you need to be a strong advocate for your children and try to resist the pressure. I would like to think that the pressure that people feel is unconsciously put on them. I'd like to think that the lawyer and the mediators involved isn't trying to pressure a person, but they don't understand how authoritative and forceful they sound. So I think...
Well, it's that and just a misunderstanding of what mediation is. We've got some great episodes on mediation talking about A mediator is not the judge.
No.
You don't have to convince the mediator of anything. It's really, if you're going into a mediation where 100% that you can't budge on some things because of safety, it's about exploring ways of whether there can be a safe parenting arrangement. It's not having to agree to something.
Absolutely.
And I think everyone needs to go listen. If you are unfamiliar with what mediation is, go and listen to our mediation episodes that talk about what a mediation isn't, so that you don't get railroaded, because I do hear so many people do get that pushed into that. If you don't agree in mediation, we'll have to go to court. Now, that is another pressure that's put on people. What do you say when it comes to safety issues, though? If they're saying, if you don't agree to time with the kids or 50-50, we're going to take you to court, what can you say just now to alleviate some of those people?
If it's not okay for the children to be with this other person, then that's your hard line. It is not okay. Maybe we could offer supervised time. Maybe you could offer phone calls. But the time with the other parent has to be in the child's best interests, and that's the bottom line, right?
Okay.
It has to be in the child's best interests.
All right. So we're going to go into identifying the real safety concerns. We're then going to talk about supervised time as a starting point. We're going to talk and explore about stepped parenting orders, drug and alcohol testing. We're going to talk about 50-50 care, and we're also going to talk about how to hold your boundaries in mediation and what to do when you really realize in the mediation it's done. So let's get into identifying first the real safety concern. So before you go into mediation, if you do think this is a waste, you really need to figure out what the exact problem is.
Yes.
Why are you like, no way, our kids can't be unsupervised around this person? Mum, what are some examples of why someone would think that it wasn't safe?
Usually there's something along the lines of drug and alcohol, or perhaps someone's got some bad friends, or they're different people living at the house and it's not safe. There are a number of reasons why it may not be safe. There might be family violence going on as well.
Other things I can think of is mental health issues, untreated mental health issues. Like you said, Mum, unsafe people. Around the children, neglect or lack of supervision.
Yes.
Is that one?
Yeah. I mean, I think I wouldn't want to see anyone put this in their documents, but stupidity, I think, is a reason.
Yes.
But don't say.
But you can't.
We don't say they're stupid, and in fact, you don't say they're unsafe, and you don't really say they're drunk all the time. What you do say in your mediation, and I want you to prepare this in writing before you go in, why you think it's unsafe. Because she does this and she did that, and therefore that could have happened or did happen, and there's been no change, or he's got no idea about, or I don't know, what's he do, glass cutting inside the house or something, leave bits around for the kid. Sorry, you need to say what the things are so that it doesn't sound like you're just parroting off something you've heard somewhere else. It's got to be pertaining to your situation.
So you've got to be really clear about your specific concern. Do you need to have proof of it in a mediation?
So seldom that anyone does have proof. I mean, but thank God with Facebook and stuff, sometimes there is something that has been posted or sent to you at around the right time, and that may help you. If it's like, oh, heck, little Johnny was out in the road and next door had to bring them in, or, he's so sunburned, I didn't mean to get him so sunburned. And those sorts of things give a taste to it. Or it might be something that they posted on Facebook, like having one of the children do some very unsafe act somewhere and put it on Facebook.
Yes, yeah. Or alcohol, or you've got your DV stuff if you've had DV. So there's all these things. So make sure you've written your specific concerns down. Make sure you bring in proof if you've got it.
Yes.
But really have a think and nut it down, because like most parents, their immediate reaction is that's unsafe, that's not safe. And you can't you can, but it's not going to help anybody to just say it's unsafe.
Yes.
Now, Mum, are there things that people think are unsafe, but actually the court won't consider unsafe?
Yeah. There's things like, so the court accepts that different parents have different parenting styles, and that it's not their business to impose one person's standards on parent standard on the other parent standard. So often when there's conflict between both parents, the children will have one routine at one person's house and a completely different routine at the other person's house. and they sort of having to adjust. The court won't say, oh, because you don't follow that routine, you can't have the children. That's not going to happen. But you may think it's fundamental to their well-being. Or the other parent may let them be on the devices all day long, And again, that's not something the court will step in on.
So you identify your specific concerns. You make sure that it is a specific concern that the court would see as a safety risk. But then you're going into mediation, and obviously you're going to say, no way. But what are the other options? And let's talk about supervised time as a start. What is something you could negotiate with them? And what is supervised time?
Okay. So if you really 100% can't see the child being unsupervised with the other parent, then of course supervised time is one of the things that's often raised. Now, supervised time usually takes place in an official environment, in some like a kindergarten or play group sort of environment, where the children are delivered, the other parent meets them there, and they have some interaction under the watchful eye of the supervisors, and then a safe and happy interaction, and then each of them goes their separate ways. The one person goes home, the kids go back with their parent. And it's not ideal, and a lot of kids, particularly older kids, just hate it. But it is a way of protectively allowing the child to spend some time with the father or the mother while they work out whether it's right or wrong. And I think that's even if there are allegations of drug and alcohol abuse, you can still go to the supervised time, because the supervisors would know if a person was, under the weather with some sort of substance thing, and they can either terminate the time or refuse to start the time. Other sorts of supervised time, Laura, are where your mum or your dad or both, or his mum, his dad, or his sisters, your sister's mum and dad might supervise you. Like, it might be a relative that can supervise, and it's less formal. So say, I was having supervised time with my kids. If I had it at my sister's place and they were watching me, then it doesn't seem so weird to the children, because they're just home with auntie or whatever. But yeah.
Okay. There's options then for parents the unsafe parent that you might think too unsafe, to spend time with the kids in an appropriate, safe way through either, like you said, a contact centre or a family member, or, maybe you've got a joint best friend or someone that would. So the kids can still see the parent while whatever safety concerns are being looked at. I think it's probably important to mention here, Mum, we have heard some pretty horrible contact centre stories. I don't want to scare people, because I know there are some good ones out there. But is there anything that you want to say about contact centres when people are looking to choose a contact centre?
All I'll say is look it up on Google Review. Look up their reviews on Google, because people don't hold back. Okay? The court is moving towards authorising and accrediting supervisor workers, but that hasn't gone very far down the track. And when they first started years ago, it was all completely by volunteers, right? And now it's become a thing where supervision is expected to be offered. They're still very busy, but now they're coming under the umbrella of the court, and the court presumably will weed out the ones who don't function well. What the court's worried about is that the person who is accused of doing something with the children or being unsafe with the children, they actually spend the most time with the contact centre supervisor. The children come in, they're on their best behaviour, not the children, the woman or man that's being supervised. Everything goes hunky-dory. The children leave, the other person leaves. The supervisor can form quite a rosy point of view, opinion about the relationship between the person who has been rated, I guess, by the other parent as not safe, and the children. And so they then perceive the other person as exaggerating their concerns. And so they're not very good, most of them yet, I think. And apologies to the ones who are good at this, but the court's identified that there needs to be some help given and training given in terms of family violence, and the misidentification of the abuser, which is something a lot of the police are grappling with at the moment too. They come into a case, or the supervisor does, halfway through. They don't know the rest of the story. What they see is someone who is, if it's you that's insisting on the supervision, then they're just seeing it from there and they don't know the whole backstory. So it's hard. You've got to advocate for yourself. But look, here's a tip. If the other side, the other person, just suggests one, I'd be very careful, because it seems there are some contact centres that, yes, about whom there have been issues, okay?
They're enmeshed in certain rights groups, I think is what we can say.
That's probably right, yeah.
But realistically, it's the same thing as when people turn up to court, when people turn up for family reports, people turn up to the police station. The person who has been put through safety issues, family violence, they're the ones that are jittery, nervous, shaking, not being able to speak properly, having trouble and looking paranoid.
Looking crazy.
While the perpetrator is usually calm, cool, collected, when they're that manipulative and controlling type, particularly with coercive control. So it is that same game that's played in all of these specific areas in court, and that includes contact centres. So just be mindful that you choose one based off reviews, and be mindful of making sure you have a relationship with them as well, and letting them know that you're a good person and everything's okay. But anyway, so supervised contact is an option. And I just want to put out there, it's frowned upon, isn't it? Before you've even got to court, before you've even done anything, if you all of a sudden just cut off contact with the kids, unfortunately, even if it is like a safety issue, is it just better to try and organise supervised time so that you're not looked as a baddie in court? Yes,
probably. So the people for whom supervised time is almost automatic is where there has been an incident. It's usually an event that changes everything. But yes, if it's for the children's sake, not the other person's sake. So I always say, look, the other person's not going to die of a broken heart if you just wait a couple of days or a week or two, settle in, get over this, and then let's resume communications for the best interests of the children. But there is a school of thought that said that if the children have been directly abused by a person, that to see that person again is like a renewal of the abuse. So it's not a one-size-fits-all.
No, but just be mindful that the court looks at your actions even before you've been to court.
Yeah.
So if you're not trying to proactively encourage a relationship with the other parent, and if it's safe to do so and psychologically right to do so, you can be seen as the bad guy, even though you may be fully traumatized from it all. I'm just saying that. I don't agree with it. No. I'm just saying it because no one warns you of that sort of stuff.
No,
so.
You do. And you're going to the police stations sometimes, and I'm sure they say, another one of these people, they're off with the fairies or harden up. I mean, when I was a kid, it was when I was a young woman, where are the bruises, But it isn't right to force children to see a parent if there is a valid reason. So
yes. Yep. But if it's alcohol or substance abuse and you know that the supervisor is going to be there and stop it if they see that they're not well, then, that's good. If it's mental health issues, those kind of things, and if you feel it's safe to do it through that, that's something that you can negotiate in mediation.
Yes.
Now, another thing you can negotiate in mediation, Mum, is stepped orders.
Yep.
Can you talk me through what stepped orders are?
So stepped orders aren't about stepchildren or stepdaughters. They're an order that is commonly made and has always, as long as I've been involved since the early 80s, an option that the court takes to hopefully progress the time with the parent in step with the child's developmental stages, right? Or it may be that if a person hasn't seen a child for a while, a stepdaughter allows a gradual reintroduction in a safe place. And then after a certain number of visits, it goes to something more and then ultimately possibly to unsupervised time. And if you've got stepdaughters with children's development, it'll look like something like, until little Sherry is, 6 months of age, the time will be 2 hours a week, And then from 2 years of age to 5 years of age, this much time, you're gradually increasing. You can do that, but be careful. I find in people, Laura, that if something's far enough down the track, like if you're making agreements for kids up to their 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, right, and the child's only 3, it's easy to sign these things. You go, everything will be sorted out by then. I'm sure there won't be an issue by then. But you don't really know if your abusive ex is going to get better, if the alcohol is going to get less, So be careful of going into consent orders that are very pie in the sky. I think if you've got into mediation and there's some pressure there, first of all, don't crystal ball gaze beyond what you can see and just say, well, it just depends. Just say that. I can't go further. It depends.
So in an ideal world, the stepped parenting orders is to basically give the other parent the opportunity to show that they're getting better and they're consistent good behaviour over time. Stage 1 would be supervised visits. Stage 2 would be short, unsupervised visits. Stage 3 would be longer daytime visits. Stage 4 might be be overnight. Stage 5 might be 50-50, who knows. That's the kind of approach it takes. But what you're saying, Mum, is don't agree to that unless you know 100% that they are better. Because if you do agree to this and sign it as consent orders, they may fall off the wagon and be horrible again, and you're stuck with following those orders.
Yeah.
So that is something to keep in your head. And Mum, wasn't there a case?
Leinhart and Ellens, I think.
Yeah.
And this is the case where the judge, they had stepped orders, and the judge had made an order that the father had to engage in cognitive behavioural therapy, and then that was a precondition for the child progressing to spend unsupervised time with the parent. And the full court just said, we granted the appeal, the mother appealed, and they said, you can't pass that decision-making, that judicial role to a psychologist. You can't give that permission to someone else, because maybe having done a course doesn't mean you've taken it on board. And I have to say, there are some men's behaviour groups out there. I got an email from someone yesterday, and it is a bandwagon, I think, that any accused people are hopping on. But just because you go there doesn't make you changed. And that's why the court, I think, was very unhappy with this. So they sent it off to be heard again.
I think it was Dr. Emma Katz.
Yep.
She said just recently one of the myths of coercive control is that if you send an coercive controller alcoholic to rehab, when they come out, all you've got now is just a sober coercive controller. Just keep in mind, and rehab for the mental side of things, if they go and do a behaviour or an anger management course, just because they've done it doesn't mean they're not going to be it again. And that's the same with alcohol and drugs. So just be mindful, like Mum said, if you are going to agree to that, you need to know for sure that they have changed. So that gets us onto drug and alcohol testing, Mum.
Yeah.
So if they're going into mediation with someone who wants time with the kids, but they're drunk and there's no way they could look after the children, or they're still on drugs, what kind of things can they negotiate in mediation to get the kids to have some time with them eventually? Need to start doing your disclosure but have no idea where to start? Feeling overwhelmed about mediation coming up? Or just trying to deal with negotiating with a manipulative ex? Then you need to go to thedivorcecourse.com.au to go to the free resources section, where you can get a mediation checklist, a disclosure checklist, a word salad, read a letter like a pro checklist, and also a before you go checklist. Get ahead of the game and be organised and ready, as this handy checklist, along with the accompanying episodes of the podcast, will be perfect for you. All you need to do is go to thedivorcecourse.com.au and go to the free resource section and download the free checklists today. If they're going into mediation with someone who wants time with the kids, but they're drunk and there's no way they could look after the children, or they're still on drugs, what kind of things can they negotiate in mediation to get the kids to have some time with them eventually?
Well, apart from supervised that we've already talked about, I see a lot of orders where the parties put in place that some testing, hair follicle testing. It's a misnomer because it's not your follicle they're testing. But if a person has to undergo hair testing, it shows alcohol abuse, it shows marijuana abuse up to 12 weeks before. But it doesn't capture, as far as I'm understand, a lot of the like ice and other stuff that cocaine, which are more short-acting things. So you might say that upon your ex providing clear hair follicle tests, that the children can spend time unsupervised. Trouble is, one, the hair follicle testing is quite expensive. Two, one clear test doesn't mean it'll always be clear. And you can't really impose a test for each time they see them. So what people put in their orders sometimes is that the person will commence time, unsupervised time, upon a clear drug and alcohol test, whichever sort you get. And then they will undertake a random test, hair test, or blood and urine test within 24 hours of you asking for one. And they might say that you can ask them 4 times every year for a random test. Okay, and I know a case where they just did it after a long weekend.
Yes.
And sometimes they'll delay having the test, hoping their system gets clear. But that if they don't get it done within that 24 hours, then you should put in the orders that they don't go,
That is something you could negotiate in mediation. You could say a hair follicle test or random drug tests or
both,
that kind of thing, or both. Then time can occur, and then if not, then time can't. I think you raised an important point there, Mum, the cost of things, because supervised time and drug and alcohol testing, it is expensive. You can get free supervised time or remotely free from Relationships Australia, but the wait list is quite extensive, I believe, 6 to 8 months, sometimes depending on where you are in Australia. There are other free-ish supervised places like by churches, but there are professional paid ones that you can also go to, but they're incredibly expensive sometimes. So who pays for that?
Well, and that's something else that has to be addressed at mediation. One school of thought is, well, the person who's insisting on the supervision should pay it. And then the other school of thought is, yes, but they've got the children 100% of the time, so maybe the person whose behaviour has led to it should pay for it, or whose alleged behaviour has led to it. Sometimes they reach agreement on 50-50, something like that. But so it's definitely a thing that needs to be taken into account. And if you're in a mediation and you're proposing something like supervised time, before you go in, make sure you've got the names of some supervisors, make sure you've got an idea, ring them up, see how long the wait is there. And, you can't usually get 4 or 5 hours at a time. They have windows of an hour or so.
And I guess you should do that for drug and alcohol testing. Look up how much it costs, where you can get it done.
Have a clear idea.
And have that ready before you go into mediation.
And
so you can even do an intake with some of the contact centres in advance. So you're really ready to go. So there are some options there.
I like that option because that means you're choosing the person and you're not having one sort of thrust on you. And we should talk, Laura, about the ones that will not accept supervised time. That's what you're going to come up against.
Many people, that's just like, no, I'm not doing supervised time. I want 50-50. Like we hear that a lot.
All the time.
A lot.
All the time.
And a whole bunch of people I speak to feel super pressured to agree to it because they think that's the amicable thing to do. So Mum, what kind of things does the court consider before they think that that's totally okay? And then we'll talk about when they refuse drugs and alcohol or supervised.
Okay. The court, up until a year before, had to consider equal shared parental responsibility and equal time as the first thing they had to tick off. There was a big inquiry, and the government of Australia has changed that now to be just that the thing that the court's got to look at is the best interests of the children. And those factors are found in Section 60cc of the Family Law Act. And those factors are found in Section 60cc of the Family Law Act and include things like the views of the child. It includes things like who's been the primary carer, what money has been paid, have the children be exposed to family violence, and all of those things that come into play. But 50-50, if you're having a pizza, you don't share it 50-50. You go, oh, do you want half and I'll have half? The only time you hear 50-50 is like a gambling or I don't know, but I find it repulsive.
Just before you go on, Mum, if you want to learn about how the court thinks about the best interests of the children and those factors Mum talks about, we go into depth in an episode. I'll put that link in the show notes. But you're right, Mum. I only want to have 2 pieces of pizza and then I feel sick. My partner wants to eat the whole thing, and but so it's never 50, never half with anything, really.
But you certainly don't say 50-50.
No,
you don't.
No,
I mean, that's silly, and it's hard.
So if people are feeling pressured to do that, that is not what is being considered. It is the best interest of your child, and every single person listening today has completely different factors to consider for their child, because every child is different. So, Mum, let's talk about then, what if they refuse supervised in the mediation? What if they refuse to do drug or alcohol testing?
Well, I can sort of see where they're coming from, but they're actually throwing a tantrum, right? They're not going to, the drug and alcohol testing, they may be outraged, but if there's been a valid reason in the past, go and do your tests. If they won't accept supervised time, and an astounding number of people, they would rather not see the kids at all than see them in a supervised environment. Those people, they're the red flags for me, the ones who are not really thinking of the children, not really wanting to spend time with the children, because it can be a gateway into something else. It can lead on later on to more full-time, but some people just won't even do that first step.
Well, I think we have discussed this before in another podcast, and there was a snippet of it on TikTok, and people were commenting, you don't understand, I don't want to be controlled by my ex, they're making me do it. Another person said, you don't understand, I don't want the kids to see me as the bad person, I'd rather them not see me at all. I mean, that I'm just putting those reasons there but realistically, what you're saying, Mum, is supervised, in the eyes of the court, if you turn down supervised care, a supervised time to see your children, what does the court think about that?
Well, they're thinking you're not putting the children first, because it's not
even
you
if you're
seeing
completely innocent and you've done nothing wrong, but they'll only let you see them supervised.
Well,
the court would see you
I think so, because it's the kids. It's not about the person who's being supervised. If you want your children to be able to see you, and the only way they can is in a supervised centre, well, then I think you've just got to suck it up and go. It might be that it's completely unfair and there's no grounds for it, but that will all come out at trial. And also, too, with 50-50, I'm not saying that equal time is never appropriate. Like you said, each case is different, but it is not the blanket sort of thing that used to happen in the old days where you had 50-50 and you had to prove why it shouldn't be. Now the court is simply looking at the best interests of the children, and you don't present as a very child-focused person if you won't go to a contact centre to see the children, if that's the only way. And I think the court knows people are being, that some of it is it's not genuine, right? It's just the ex bullying you. But still, in those early stages, to keep that communication with the kids, maybe you do supervised time, and you can demonstrate the court. It's not that I'm accepting it, Your Honour. It was the only way for the children and I to get together.
So when you get into mediation, you've got the lawyers
in
on
one
their
ear,
side saying it's not fair, blah, blah, blah. And you've got your lawyers in your ears saying, are you sure that this safety issue is such a big deal? Maybe it's not as bad as you think it is. So you've got that, and then you've got the mediator in the middle saying, well, your ex said blah, 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 and the pressure they'll be putting on you to say, if you don't agree here, you'll be going to court. What is something that they could practice saying clearly and genuinely, if they believe that their children really are unsafe and it's important not to budge on this issue and offer all of these other options we've just discussed, what is something they could say and practice saying when they're getting that pressure from everybody?
I've been thinking about this seriously for some time. I know the children and I know my ex. I wish I could agree. I wish I could, but unfortunately, it's not in the children's best interests.
Or, I'm open to discussing options, but I'm not comfortable with agreeing to unsupervised time until my concerns are addressed. And I think if you can practice and say something like that, write it down.
Yeah, write it
and
down.
Write it down and just read it out. Like, I don't know, I've seen all these videos recently of people being interrogated by the FBI. And they just said the same answer after everything. And I'm not saying to do that.
No.
But if they're putting pressure on you, your lawyer, the mediator, or their lawyers, just say,
Or maybe the
I'm open
child
to discussing, but
Yeah.
I'm not agreeing to anything other than supervised until my concerns are addressed.
Yeah.
And, and that way, your mediation's focused on their safety, practical solutions, and your kids. Now, Mum, what happens, though, when your ex is just doing the denial, playing the victim, all of the things, and refusing to budge on it at all? What can people do when the mediation's basically just at a loggerhead?
Well, if they refuse mediation and you are adamant, if they refuse supervision and you are adamant it needs to be supervised, or, you might be adamant it needs only to be one night a week or something. If they're adamant and you're adamant on your side of the fence, then nothing happens and you both walk away. However, you will have heard all of the other parties' arguments that they're going to be raising in court, which is useful for you, and you haven't sold your kids down the river. So listen to what options there are. You'll have people brainstorming all around you, different alternatives. Well, what if this? Or what if you could be in the pub? What if such and such? And and that's the job of the mediator and to some extent your lawyer and their lawyer. But you can't just, they won't agree, therefore I'll go to this. Because if it's for the children to be safe before, it's still important.
Yes. And I'm going to reach out to all the people pleasers out there, because I know I was one. And in my mediations, when I was discussing, not this topic, but other things, I just wanted to make
be the good
mediator,
girl.
Like me, the lawyers like me, and everyone go, oh, she's not the problem. You know what I mean? I tried so hard to make everyone happy, did not focus on what mattered. So that, those kind of things you need to practice. And if mediation falls apart, remember that it doesn't mean you failed. Hey, Mum.
No, it doesn't. It means that you tried, and that's all the court asks. You will get your certificate, a Section 60I certificate, so that you can go to court, or they can go to court if they want to. But you haven't, if you hold a genuine belief that it's not safe for the kids, and then you allow yourself to be pressured into letting the kids have unsupervised time, then your whole argument, your whole premise that the person's not safe is upset by that. The court's going to go, oh, really? Oh, really? So why did you, And
they're so unsafe. Why did you let them have unsupervised time?
So you have
and
to
that
be
is
ready.
something that's something that is thrown
So
up in
often.
people's faces all the time.
Yeah.
So, Mum, you always say start as you mean to go on, and that's in everything. But in this, if they are unsafe, you can't say to a judge, because they're not going to get it, I was pressured, I was coerced, or whatever it is. You're going to have to just try and hold your nerve, because if it doesn't go past here, it just might mean you need further evidence. It just might mean you need a professional assessment of the situation, or it might mean you do need a court to go through and look at it. And they do call this bluff, don't they, Mum?
Yes.
They say to some of our ladies in particular, if you don't agree, we're going to go to court and you're going to have to pay the costs because blah, 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 blah. So
it's about that, Laura.
Yes.
One is almost never are costs ordered in children's matters, right? Almost never. And the second thing is, your lawyer and the mediator are doing, I think, is more, think of it as reality checking. And, it may be, they don't know one way or another. Gosh, they don't even know your kids, right? They're just making sure you're aware of what's the consequences are. So they're just reality checking you. And if you are sure, then that shouldn't faze you. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you also, in that mediation, Mum, at least use it to your advantage to get something agreed to?
You can.
Like,
give the bikes back.
Like, things like that.
Yeah,
Can you go, okay, well, this is a disaster, but can we at least negotiate on who's going to help pay for school camp or something?
Absolutely. And if you've got a document that you've been dying to get the other person to sign, maybe it's a passport application for a child, might be a release of mortgage fee or a contract for the house or whatever. Every time you're in a mediation, take them in with you because, well, if we can't reach agreement on children, could you please sign this release for the bank so that we can sell the house? Can you sign this? Just use your opportunity. A lot of people, Laura, are starting to say, I'm not going to talk about property until we've sorted out children.
Yes, I'm hearing
Me
that.
too. It seems to be a thing. And
so what do you say?
It used to be the case that the court couldn't properly assess a division of property based on contributions. They could do that. But future needs, they had to know where the kids were going to be first because that's one of the factors, the person who's got care of the children. And so they go, I want to do children first, then I'll do property because if the children primarily with the other person, then they're going to get an adjustment in the property pool because they've got the kids. So they want the kids 50-50 first and take away that adjustment percentage. And then also I think there is an element of financial in there for child support as well.
Can you say, no, we've come to an impasse, can we start working on property?
Yeah, of course you can, but whether they will or not, because they're always at choice and they can leave. Sometimes what I do, they say they don't want to deal with property, children first, and sometimes when they say that, the person who's got the kids is in dire financial straits, right? So you can say this mediation is about both things, and if you won't talk about it, then I will be able, because you don't need a certificate to file for property matters. I will file in the court. I will say I've made a genuine attempt and that you have not made a genuine attempt to settle.
Okay.
It's a bit insidious, but it's starting to get around these things, the 50-50.
Yes.
I'm not doing property till we do the kids. Let's equalise the super. Those sorts of things which are not law, really. Not good law.
Yeah. So there are people that are feeling the pressure to, I have to agree because I need to do property, but that's not how it works. You can do both. You can work on that. So if you are feeling the pressure, if you are feeling the push, just remind yourself, center yourself, think about your kids, what's the best interest for them. Yes, it may be a bit harder for you guys, and yes, it would be easier to give in, but I have seen people who have given in and are now dealing with the consequences afterwards, which are just as disastrous. So really have a think. Mum, I think that in summary, we're saying be really clear about the concern, like really have it specifically written down, have evidence if you've got it, to just be like, this is the issue and I can't move on this because of this issue. Focus on the solutions that protect your kids. So supervised visits, stepped orders, testing, whatever it is that, or just phone calls even. I know we just only touched on that, but FaceTime or phone calls, if it's safe, something like that is another option as well. Yeah. But don't feel pressured to agree to anything if it's unsafe. And when you get to, if you do end up in court, you can show it. Now, the other side may be using this as a strategy to test you, to see if they can make you cave.
Yes.
And if the lawyers on the other side see, oh no, she's not actually going to budge at all, or he's not going to budge, we need to rethink our strategy. And maybe their lawyer will say, you probably need to consider supervised time.
Because we know what the judge will say, or you've got a fair chance the judge will say this. That's right.
Because there's this trick in mediation, I think, Mum, for people who are self-represented or haven't got proper legal advice. They go into these mediations and they take whatever the other lawyers or the mediators say as gospel.
Yes.
And sometimes they're just saying what they need to say to get people to agree. I know that sounds horrible, but no. I think if with the pressure put on you, please take everything you're told with a grain of salt and see this as a test. It's a battle of wills to see who's going to come out on top. And if you're a strong, fierce, protective parent and your kids need strong, fierce protection, you need to bring that with you to your mediation and show them that you're not going to budge and they may cave. Like they may cave.
I think you're right. I think that our word for the cushion today is authenticity. If you bring your authenticity to the mediation and you stay in your space, you know what's actually happening. Your ex who's denying all of these things is not being authentic. They're bringing their inauthentic self. But it's sort of started to mean to go on, but you're authentic. I think the reality checking, the pressure that people are feeling is meant to flush out the people who aren't being authentic or genuine. But if you are genuinely concerned for the children, then you'll be able to hold, I think, if you keep these thoughts in your mind. It's a great idea to write something on a piece of paper and just have it there. And someone I was talking to a week or so ago, she'd written down on each topic in children, what was her hard line of what she could and couldn't agree to. And then in the heat of the moment, she could look down and go, oh, no, that's one of my no's.
Because if you've been in a coercive control or domestic violence relationship, you may get wobbly boots. You may go into mediation. You will find you're falling into the same pattern that you had in the relationship. And that is they somehow manage to talk you round, or they somehow manage to coerce you, or they know what buttons will scare you or how to threaten you in a covert way. And so you just have to have that stuff written down and be really solid.
Yeah. And when the mediator comes back and says something, they say this, and this. I know. I hear it in my ex's voice. When they come to you and report, you're hearing their voice. It's a conversation with your ex through a mouthpiece, and it can really upset and wobble you. You're right, Rose. So write it down. Bring a strong, firm friend. I heard of a case where the mediator wouldn't let this person on a video link have a friend in the room.
I know, that was outrageous. So if they're saying no friends, tell them to go jump.
Unless that's the court mediators.
Unless it's a court mediator. But I'd also like to point out how proud I am of anyone listening today. Hey, Mum.
Yes.
Who is being pressured by big, fancy, expensive lawyers or scary tactics, who are standing up for their children and their safety. We're so proud of you.
Because you're copying it on the kids' behalf, and I feel for it too. And, it will be, in the long run, the children will be better for it if you're standing up for them. If you can handle it, just hold the line. It's easier for the kids if you hold the line and you tell them no and you set this than it would be if they were left to make the decision themselves. So more power to you.
The harder your battle is now to get what's safe for them, the more you put into it now. If you give in, you're going to be fighting this for a very long time if you give in. So we're really proud of you. And if you're listening today, we also want to give you big hugs and send all our best to you and your children. And if you are triggered by this, please call 13 11 14 Lifeline. And of course, please call 1-800-RESPECT to get connected to your local service. But we're really proud of you. Keep going. Go and listen to some of the episodes. And Mum and I are always here for you.
We are.
Thanks for your time, Mum.
Bye, Rosie. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, darling.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.